Washington's coaching staff is still growing.
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into another edition of the Locked On Huskies podcast. I'm Roman Tomashoff. That's Lars Hanson. He's the site editor with Athlon Sports and Inside the Huskies. I'm the site editor with Huskies Wire. Thanks for making this your first watch or first listen days. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Lars, we got a really fun show coming at all the everydayers today. We got a bit of a Thursday news dump. Whole bunch of major priority recruits set official visits on Thursday. Brady Smigiel, Esun Tafa being among the top names. We're going to get there. Washington also hired a new director of recruiting, a local guy, Marcus Griffin, which is a fantastic hire. Can't wait to get into that one a little bit more. But right off the bat, a couple more on-field, whatever you want to call them at this point, assistants were hired by Jedd Fisch and his staff. One is former first-round quarterback J.P. Losman, who played for Jedd in Seattle. And there's also a former NFL offensive lineman who played for Jedd in Jacksonville, Mike Brewster, former All-American at Ohio State. Let's start with J.P. Losman, Lars, because this is really interesting after Jimmy Doherty was promoted to offensive coordinator.
Yeah, well, it's one of those where this is a perfect NFL sell where you're not doing it as an full-time quarterbacks coach or something like that, where he's the assistant quarterbacks coach. That's the position behind, basically not a GA, a little bit more so than an analyst, but you're looking at it thinking, when you're recruiting quarterbacks and think, hey, I'm Jedd Fisch, I called plays in the NFL, I can get you to the NFL. Jimmy Doherty's been with me forever. Him and I know how to develop quarterbacks and find quarterbacks and all those sorts of things. Oh, and by the way, as a third bonus, you get to work with a former NFL quarterback in camp every single day of practice. And to me, that's invaluable. You cannot put a price tag on that, because the fact that now Jedd's job becomes a little bit easier. Now Jedd can do all these other things, and JP can work with the quarterbacks and Jimmy, and it becomes easier for Jedd to take more of a CEO role, because again, the quality of hire, you're not saying, oh, hey, he's an up-and-coming coach at, this D2 school and he's got to get up and whatever. It's like, no, those are good hires as well, but this is a perfect fit for what Jedd has been trying to sell with this program.
Oh, absolutely. It's one of those things where, had a lot of success in college, was a first-round pick. So all of that really matters, especially as Jimmy has to take more of the oversight role. I'm sure he's still going to work very closely with Damon, which is something I want to monitor going forward. But Lars, I actually got to speak to a source very, very close to this matter about what this hire is going to bring, and said that J.P. Losman is an awesome guy to have on the recruiting trail, who did a really great job when guys were brought on campus in terms of recruiting down at Oklahoma, doing some different things during his time there. And on top of that, this isn't just a hire where you're getting J.P. Losman. J.P. Losman's wife was the director of Player and Family Services, I believe was the title, at Oklahoma, and my source raved about her as well, saying she's wonderful. She did a whole lot of great things for everybody around the university. And it's something where if you're going to create a role for her as well, that seems like a really smart move on Jedd Fisch's part, as you try to, continue to improve player relations and run your program, the way that you wanted to at Arizona, where you're bringing in a culture coach in Martell Irby, which is a very unique role, and having a lot of different roles like this just around the football operations, which we'll get to a little bit with Marcus Griffin as well. That's just a really, really smart thing to do, just kind of diversifying the coaching staff a little bit.
Well, it legitimizes what Jedd sells, where how many times has he mentioned, hey, I brought up like 50 people from Arizona, not just players. We're talking like families, Cedric Septo. Omora did come, now left. But all those people that came. So it's one thing to bring the on-field staff, because that's on-field cohesion. Having your message reverberate throughout the entire building requires buy-in from everybody within the department itself. And that means bringing some associate ADs or some, football ops people or things like that, where whether it's coming from Jedd or anybody else's mouth, it's the exact same message coming out. And I think that's what's so imperative with this. And I'm intrigued at that, because I could absolutely see, we want, and here's the thing, here's where this matters even more. Humble brag again. When Tom Pelissero quote tweeted me during Jimmy Doherty and Jedd Fisch's press conference saying, hey, he had some NFL opportunities, this is the perfect segue to, if Jimmy wants to take a quarterback or OC job with the team next year and 2 years or whenever, JP Losman is now your guy who's also been at Clemson,
Oklahoma
in the NFL, and then back to Oklahoma. So he's been at multiple stops. It's not like a brand new guy, got to break him into a situation, but it will allow him to progress into that on-field role. Because now, again, if you're Jedd and saying, hey, again, now I have one of my former quarterbacks who I coached in the NFL. Now you're trying to sell those two on a recruiting trail. That is a home run recruiting pitch in terms of when you're looking at the high school ranks or even the college ranks. Because where did JP Losman go to college?
Oh, I'm totally blanking on that off the top of my head.
Tulane. So for Kai Horton, that massages it a bit, and that makes honestly more sense because when you're looking at Kai thinking, don't you want to try and go to the NFL? Well, hey, maybe if Damon gets whatever, or I can just develop under an NFL coach and maybe get a UDFA, and that is a better track for me to get to the NFL than playing at a G5 school and maybe not having as good of coaches around me.
So let's jump over because I love everything you said. I feel like a lot of that can also apply to Mike Brewster, where, again, former All-American at Ohio State, played in the NFL for 4 seasons, won under Jedd Fisch during his time in Jacksonville. And he's somebody who's had some time in Cincinnati, was the offensive line coach at Valparaiso. And it's very similar to when we got to talk to Micheal Switzer, who was promoted from the assistant offensive line coach to the just true OL coach a couple of weeks ago. He talked about his playing experience at Ball State and his time in the NFL with the Buffalo Bills and how valuable that is and how because first of all, Micheal Switzer is a fantastic communicator. Very impressed with everything he was able to do on that side of things. And it feels like when you look at what Mike Brewster's track record is he can do just a lot of very similar things in that role where Landon Hatchett told us that Micheal Switzer was holding individual meetings with a lot of the members of the offensive line to just be an extra tool there to help them out, which is going to be important as this room continues to expand and as you continue to have some more high-profile just recruits in the room. There'll be John Mills, Champ Leia, all those sorts of guys, Jack Schaefer being another one, where I look at all that and I love just that experience that he can add to the room as a former, obviously, best of the best player at Ohio State where he was a team captain. That extra layer of leadership, just bringing somebody in like that to assist in what is a really, really big room. I don't want that fact to go understated where there's 17 offensive linemen on scholarship in that room. You need somebody else there who can help effectively relay Micheal Switzer's message and add his own insight as well. So I love where this is going.
Exactly. And it's the same segment, perfect segue from JP Losman. We're talking about the quarterback and the progression there, where if Switzer wants to become an OC again, because he's been at smaller schools and he got an opportunity in the next couple of years. And again, it's not because of Jedd, the culture is not working and coaches are bailing left and right. It's if guys are getting elevated, if you go from analyst to O-line coach to, let's call it Nevada's OC, just to humble me.
Sure.
G5 school, lower example, but it's a step up because you're going back to being coordinator. And then you're bringing in a guy who from Florida, so Orlando, Florida. So now if he becomes an offensive line coach full time in a couple of years, now that's a bonus on the recruiting trail. Then you're talking about the Ohio State and all those sorts of things. I'm so glad we can do it this way. Because this, in a way, proves fire to one side of an equation, but on the other, Jedd's laying a foundation for a long-term sell here at Washington, where, guys can leave, whether it's 1 year, every other year, or whatever, and I got a Rolodex. I mean, we got it's all the numbers are right here. Now, somebody else might say, well, hey, he could do that anywhere. It's like, but the fact that he's bringing these people up to Seattle, JP Losman was with the Seahawks, so he has some Seattle connection. So it's not saying, hey, we're going to do this at, call it, Arizona or wherever. Maybe there wasn't the same level of connection.
So I think you just said everything perfectly. The one thing that really hits home with me about this is there are a lot of people who were not fans of the internal promotions for offensive coordinator, for offensive line coach. They did it for continuity, and then you go out and you hire up-and-coming coaches, these young guys to take those assistant roles under them, which is just great because it does everything you just said. It creates just a deeper coaching tree with guys that have connections, plus you're giving these guys opportunities. And then if they want to move on, it's, hey, we already know where these replacements is because the experience and the continuity is invaluable. Those are extremely important aspects of coaching that I think certainly went under-realized in terms of the Micheal Switzer hire especially, but moving forward, having these guys on staff for maybe 2-3 years and they stick around because they know there's an opportunity for promotion is really, really important. Lars, Washington did go external for the director of recruiting title, and they made a great hire, which we'll get to right after a message from our friends over at Factor. Looking to optimize your nutrition this year, Factor makes eating well easy with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved meals that are fresh and never frozen and ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes. With 40 options across 8 dietary preferences every week, you can customize your meals to fit your lifestyle, whether it's Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or Keto. Plus, Factor even offers wholesome smoothies, breakfast, and grab-and-go snacks to keep you fueled all day long. I love how Factor takes the stress out of meal planning. I recently tried their Protein Plus meals, and they were packed with flavor and kept me full throughout the day. The convenience is unbeatable. No prep, no mess, great food in just minutes. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/lockdowncollege50 off and use code lockdowncollege50 off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's that's lockdowncollege50 off at factormeals.com/lockdowncollege50 off to get 50% off free plus free shipping on your first box. Washington fans, I think more than other fan bases, take a lot of pride in recruiting and promoting guys from the state of Washington. Marcus Griffin is the ultimate embodiment of that. A former Bellevue High School star who was on the team for 3 state championships there, spent some time in Arizona, played at Central Michigan as well, and has been around the area. He was a college liaison for the Avery Strong College Showcase, which is really cool. He was at Ford Sports Performance for a little while, and then was Cal's assistant director of player personnel last season. And this is a hire that I absolutely love because from everything I've heard about Marcus from people very close to him is he was really excited to come home and that he's built relationships up and down the West Coast. He did a really good job helping build a good recruiting class at Cal. Obviously, the whole Jaron Sakapotelli situation, the way that all played out was interesting. And of course, he ends up back at Cal. And Marcus did a really good job with that recruiting class. And now he gets to level up. He gets to come back to Washington and take advantage of the resources of the Big Ten. And I couldn't be more excited for this.
Yeah, this is a guy where when people ask, oh, hey, well, he didn't choose Washington when he came out of high school, so him. And it's like, right. Okay, if you want to be miserable for your entire life, you choose that life path. But this is why, guys in the area value coming back. I mean, we both have seen Marcus on the sideline, dozens of times throughout the years. And it was one of those guys where it's like, man, why isn't he like on the sideline every week here? Not representing somebody else, but just, being here and working at Washington. And well, then you look at, over the years, the coaching staffs, Peterson was probably his best bet. There was no relationship with DeBoer, so that would have been outside hire. I mean, you can say that maybe there's not as much of a relationship about Jedd, but I think Jedd more so than Kalen understands the value of having people from Washington. I know that sounds kind of bizarre because people will say, well, nobody from Washington is on the staff. Like Taylor Mays doesn't count, and where's Court Dennison? We had that discussion on the show, and it's like right, but there's ways to go about it where Marcus has relationships with everybody in the Northwest. Played at Bellevue, knows the West Coast inside and out. And so when you're talking about emphasizing the state of California, like we talked about earlier this week, couldn't do any better, while also not neglecting the state of Washington because now you're talking about, the O'Day guys, the Kennedy kids. You go up and down or over and around the state and you think, yeah, because now one of the other hires that hasn't been formally announced, but again, one of the many that friend of the show, Pete Thamel, has broken over the weeks is Jaleel Wadood being the director of high school relations. So now you add a high school guy for California and a director of recruiting and this is why, and this was no slight to Jake Crawford, but this is why I said you go external because you can still keep Jake inside the building, add Jaleel for the California, the LA area, and you add Marcus for the overall generic West Coast and you play him off as a triangle, which Jedd seems to be a big triangle guy. I don't know if he was a friend of Phil Jackson's at all, but everything he does is built in a triangle where it's the quarterback, everything really seems built in a triangle.
No, absolutely. And it's one of the things that I'm really interested to see what this is going to look like with the 2026 class. Because Marcus he was at Cal for about a year and did a really good job building relationships down there, was hard at work for the 2026 class. And I want to see how those relationships might carry over to Washington, where Cal has done a couple of things where they were trying to, being in the ACC now, they were trying to dip into the South as well for defensive linemen and some different things. And I want to see if some of those guys that he was really interested in bringing to Berkeley might now be interested in coming to Seattle, playing in the Big Ten, those different sort of things. So that's one thing I want to keep an eye on. But it's one of those things that you and I talked about on the show the other day with the first round of official visits, teaser for later as well, where there was a bunch of defensive linemen, where it's Tyson Bacon from Alabama, and then the two in-state guys in David Schwartzel and Derek Coleman-Brusa, where it's very clear what Washington wants to prioritize. We've discussed that. It's not a surprise to anybody. But having somebody who played that position at the college level is also a great help, where, it's somebody like Jake Crawford as well, another defensive line guy, where having that is really helpful. And then having another guy on top of that to just kind of reemphasize, hey, we understand how important it is to build through the trenches because we're hiring guys that know that as well as anybody I think that's something that can't be understated.
Yeah, it's covering all aspects of your program. It's not just saying, hey, we're going to be an offensive team because I'm an offensive-minded coach and I'm going to hire a defensive coordinator who's basically the head coach of the defense, and he gets to make all those hires. Everything starts from Jedd. So with Jedd's vision in mind, and this is why that foundation was so important because – and credit to him more, where he had a wide reach. And I don't know if we talked about this on the show, but I know we did talk about it off the show, where there was a lot of range that he had. And Marcus – I don't want to say he doesn't have the same range. I think he has the potential to have the same range. He hasn't necessarily had the chance to show it, which is why, to your point about giving him Big Ten resources, having him come with Jedd Fisch and think, hey, you want to come play for an NFL coach and an NFL quarterback and a former Ohio State running back and a former Ohio State offensive line. You just start adding all these names, and it's not word salad for, hey, hang the resume on the wall and nobody taps just like Jedd Fisch said at his press conference. We don't have a sign that says hey, play like a champion today or hit whatever. You also don't have a resume where it's like, hey, hit that resume. It's like, no, but at the same point it can't go understated because that shows why Jedd Fisch is an attractive person to be around and coach for and those type of things, which then permeates down to the recruiting trail where if I'm a recruit and I'm coming on campus, and again, Marcus, I kind of gave up trying to figure out the NCAA rules here because I know Marcus can go off campus, but until everything gets announced, I'll just find out who actually can go off campus or whatnot. But with that being said, you're looking at it and thinking everything is there. It's all the pieces can now, whether he goes off campus or whether he has people going off campus and he's the one making the calls, the relationships are what matters. The resources are what matters. And Marcus in himself is also a resource. That's why you're stacking resources on top of resources like you stack talent on top of talent. You don't just say, hey, we got one really good dude. We're going to ride with him. It's all on him or nothing. It's like, right, has that ever worked out? No. And also it prevents down the line when these guys get promotion because, again, we've seen it already. Jedd is Mr. Promotion. Like he will either promote internally or you will get a promotion working for Jedd. One way or another, nobody is left for a lateral move, at least. The Suns don't count.
That's a different story.
That's different. But with that being said, you look at it and think all these moves are, hey, let's say somebody else leaves. Okay, well, he can also kind of assume that role and kind of help out there and know people that can help for that. So these are all upward trajectory moves is the whole point.
So I love what you're saying there because that was something I wanted to expand on as well, where when you think about what this track record could look like under Jedd Fisch, where he has traditionally promoted from within. We've seen that time and again, and we literally just talked about it with Jimmy Doherty and with Micheal Switzer, that it's something he is very prone to doing where, Lars, something you've keyed it on very well is hiring Mike Tannenbaum from the 33rd team to help with contracts that Jedd has mentioned as the de facto GM. And I'm curious with, a year or two of experience, is that something that Washington is curious about promoting from within for the time being, where you have, whoever it be, right? Because it might not just be Marcus. It might be Matt Doherty. It might be Chief of Staff Aaron Knotts, where there are a whole lot of other guys that could be learning from what this, the think tank, as they call themselves, in the 33rd team likes to do in terms of, this is how we structure a contract, because that's all of their involvement. That's Jedd has said as much. That's all it is. They are here to help with contract stuff because there's nobody in the room right now who is going to just be that sounding board right now or be that general manager right now. But I'm curious to see if, this is something where it could lead to more. It could lead to one of those promotions to whatever the title they want to be, or, it's got so many different names around the country at this point, just like in baseball where it's, chief of baseball operations, president of baseball operations, general manager, whatever, where it's become the same thing in college football. And if in a year or two, it might be Marcus, it might be Matt Doherty, it might be somebody else. And you continue to see that promotion from within. Yeah.
And that's a sign of a healthy program. It's not, because again, you could be Debbie Downer and say, oh, everybody's leaving. Everybody wants to be away from Jedd. It's like, right. but equally, he ain't having a problem filling those jobs. Right. Now, if he was, this is a much different discussion. If he hires, no offense to whoever this might be referring to, a former intern at Arizona to be his director, recruitment, then we can say, hey, he's an up and comer. He's an up and comer. It's like, if everybody's an up and comer, how about you have some established guys? All of these guys are both up and comers who are already established in their own right. So that's the key in this. They're still got plenty of elevation to go. You're not, except for Tannenbaum, that's a separate story. But with that being, most of these guys, Tannenbaum ain't much higher he can go. He's already been up there. But for everybody else.
I have more thoughts on him as an actual general manager of the New York Jets, which we don't need to get into.
I was going to say, long story short, these are all good hires, and the health of the program is good, and we've said as much in terms of if these hires were concerning or if they were underwhelming. I don't think any of these hires that Jedd has made in the past, let's call it a week, are underwhelming.
I agree. I couldn't agree more. And Lars, what's also not underwhelming are the latest round of official visitors that have set their dates, which we'll get to right after a message from our good friends over at FanDuel. And the game tips off. The NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. If you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So, Lars, this is a tough one to start with, where we could start with Brady Smigel, who set 2 visit days, an unofficial and an official. We can start with Esun Tafa in terms of, recent decommit is coming back for an official visit. Is also expected to be back for Washington's junior day. Or we could start with the guy who set his date first, which was on Wednesday. And that's Dominic Harris from Nevada, who I love his tape. That dude is a lot of fun to watch.
Okay, so I'll just pick up that easy one because I talked to Dominic.
There you go.
I talked to Dominic, the only one I talked to about it. He said it's official visit. So first thing that I asked him, so he hasn't been on campus yet, unlike Tafa and unlike Smigel. So we're worth comparing in that realm. But it's a guy that Micheal Switzer has already built the relationship with. So it's a guy from Nevada, popular state. So we already know good talent comes from the state of Nevada. And it sounds like a guy where, ironically, so I'll read you the last sentence he texted me when I asked him, what made you want to set the official visit to Washington? And keep in mind keep in mind this is also for down the road. It just felt like the right fit for me. Now, we were talking about setting, so I'll read it. The whole thing was, UW's got a lot going for it, the coaches, facility, community, all the things we've talked about with Marcus and on the show already. And now he's going to come up and see it. And so this will be one where he's coming up on May 30th, I believe. So Arizona, or no. Auburn is his first visit, Washington, and then he's got Arizona and Utah in June. Right now, man, that's great. I'm surprised. Anyway, with that being said, this is a guy where obviously you're looking at taking multiple offensive linemen in this class. They already got the kid from Roosevelt. I mean, listed as an O-line, D-line, it sounds like he's going to play O-line at this point in time. Yes. So from that, I'm going to quantify him in the offensive line category now. So you're looking at it thinking, okay, you got your interior guy, tackle. I mean, you watch this film. It sounds like he's way more of a tackle than a guard to me.
Yeah. For anybody who hasn't watched the film or hasn't looked at his rankings, number 3 player in the state of Nevada, according to 247 Sports. He is, according to the Navy All-American, I usually use, when I'm writing articles over on Huskies Wire, I usually use the 247 listed, where he's listed at 6'7.5" and 335 pounds. According to Navy All-American Combine, 6'8" and an eighth, I want to say it was, and 348 pounds. So massive human being. Moves very, very well for his size. And one of the things that, Lars, you and I had an off-air discussion about this the other day. I feel bad for the other days that we keep doing this, where we talk about things that are off-air. This is one we're absolutely going to bring on air over the course of the summer. It was Washington's just ability to identify talent. Because for over 2 months, Washington was the only offer this kid had. And he goes to the Navy All-American Combine, and all of a sudden he's got 10. It's like within 2 weeks. So Brennan Carroll did a really good job of identifying and offering him. And of course, shout out to Micheal Switzer where it's, hey, we still want to get this guy on campus. Obviously the interest has been reciprocated. And I'm glad you mentioned Adyong Yang from Roosevelt a minute ago, because Lars, what do these two have in common? I'll give you a hint. They're both massive. they're both.
Yeah, I was going to say their first kids off the bus, absolute units. Like the guys you need in the trenches in the Big Ten, like the guys that we've been clamoring for. And again, it's also worth reminding, and same thing with Esun Tafa, where whether you're getting premium talent or 3-star talent that you coach into 4-star talent down the road, which Washington, as UTs, has been able to do far and above, more so than most schools on the West Coast, because you look at the amount of I wonder the ratio of 3-stars to NFL talent per school.
Oh, Washington's
got to be in that like top 3 group on the West Coast for sure. But you look at it and think, okay, this is a guy, he's only a 3-star, and because I'm glad you mentioned that, where Esun Tafa is a 4. But no matter what, you're looking for the size, you're looking for the measurables, you're looking for Steve Belichick's favorite word, projectability, all these sorts of things where not to pour sour on that wound, but just that was one thing he always mentioned. Like, you're just looking for guys that you can project in. And the other thing is when you're getting guys in the high school ranks, you can develop them in the program. That's why it's so imperative to get that size in high school. So you have them for 2, 3, 4 years, not to go find them in the portal and pay probably 2, 3, 4x what you would pay to develop a kid.
So you mentioned Esun Tafa. Sorry, I just know we've got to get to a couple other guys here over the last couple of minutes. We don't need to spend a lot of time on Esun Tafa. We just discussed him at length the other day. For all the everydays, if you didn't listen to that, go back and check that one out, where we share a lot of the same things, because I'm going to summarize this in about 30 seconds, because we need to talk about this, how important what's going on with Brady Smigel is. Esun Tafa will be up for his official visit on June 6th. He's also set trips to USC and Utah for after that, but it's a great sign that, as he said, Washington will still be in the mix. Getting him for an official visit is going to be massive. And I'm curious to see how the official visit schedule is going to work out, which will be really interesting. But UW is doing a great job staying in the race for him. And I certainly would not rule them out of getting a recommitment from him at some point this summer, because of the relationship that they were able to establish with him right off the bat. And you could quantify all those things with Brady Smigel as well, because Brady will be on campus twice. He will be here for Washington, according to Adam Gorney on 3 reported it as well, that he will be on campus for Washington's junior day on March 8th, which is huge. And then he'll be back for his final official visit. Just like Washington did with a lot of guys last year, he's coming on June 19th, which will be, I'm pretty sure, I don't have the schedule offhand, that final weekend of official visits before a dead period. So getting him up at that point in time will be vital, because we saw what that visit looked like last year.
I'll say this: when we both thought, when we talked about it, where we thought he might commit when he came up in December, before the bowl game, where I think just because a kid's not publicly committed doesn't mean he's not giving off commitment energy. And
Sure.
when I say, the reason why I say that is you're making 3 trips in 6 months, call it, to Washington, 2 on your own dime, 1 at the end. I think we all know where this is going. Like, I love Shane. I love Shane Beamer. Big fan. And I know not a lot of people are. I don't buy sitting behind Bryce Underwood. I just don't. UCLA is the one that concerns me. And the reason why I say that is because Shane Rosenthal, who came up with him on the December visit, was not – at least I never got the impression that he was going to end up at Washington, because he was a 25 kid. You already taken 4 or 5 receivers. He was kind of looking for a home. I think he was committed to Princeton at that point. It's a very smart kid. Very smart kid. Reminds me a lot of Logan Loya.
I like that.
Where I never understood how Logan got passed over by every program. I remember trying to implore some people that watched, like, hey, how is Logan not on the board here? Like, he's going to have production. And lo and behold, here we are. So those type of kids that come out of California just always seem to find their way. And
absolutely,
there's going to be that pull in relationship where they obviously have a good connection. And I truly couldn't tell you what UCLA's prospects are at quarterback, or really anything about UCLA aside from, I do know Deshaun Foster is the head coach, and I do know they are located in the southern part of California. That is about.
Oh, you nailed it. So I think you just said it perfectly, where when you said, I don't know who their prospects at quarterback are. That's it. That's important here. That is very important, because one thing that every young quarterback prospect would want to do is find a place where they can play early. And he can do that at UCLA. So certainly something to keep an eye on, being from the area. Like those are key factors there, plus Shane Rosenthal, who he's very, very close with. But I really want to just spend a minute or two, Lars, harping on the fact that Washington will get the last visit for him, because that's always something that you want where, first visit is great, where it's, hey, we don't want to let you off campus till you commit. We'll see what that might look like with a couple of these guys. I have questions, not bad reasons. It's because, players who might visit for, say, the spring game will want to make sure that they can take one or two more before maybe making a decision. But that last visit can be so critical. And what I'm curious about is something Brady said in the On3 interview he did a couple of days ago, where it's, I want to make sure I can recruit a class around me. So if all of a sudden we see a couple, high-end receivers, tight ends, maybe an offensive lineman or two start joining that visit weekend with Brady, it plays to something you and I were talking about the last time we discussed him, which is the magnetism of a high-end quarterback prospect. And you watch the film, you see it. You see everything that he can be on the field. And people are going to start taking notice of that. So I'm going to be watching this very, very closely.
And to tie everything together, Washington really has always kind of been a magnet for quarterbacks in one way, shape, or form. And now you have the ultimate kind of quarterback magnet setup. Jedd, Jimmy, JP, Damon, call it Tristan and Dash. And now you have, and then you could possibly have Smigel in that, to where you're talking about, I don't know who wins that job after Damon leaves. I do not care.
Yep.
Think about the end of Chris Peterson's tenure, where you had to go to, it was either Jake Hanner or Jacob Eason. You are no longer in that consideration anymore. You are no longer in Kansas.
Yep. Lars, as always, thank you so much for being here. Thank you every day for tuning in. We really do appreciate your support. We got so much more fun stuff coming for you throughout the offseason. So please make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcast, whether that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We're there. We're everywhere. We're updating this channel with new content every single day. So make sure you click that like button, click that little bell so you never miss when we post a new video. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, drop them right down below in the comment section. And if you're audio only, please give us 5-star reviews. It does help us out a lot. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you on Monday.